Welcome back to Die Hard on a Blank, the podcast where we explore the influence of Die Hard on action cinema, one action movie at a time. I'm Philip Gawthorne. With me is my co-host Liam Billingham. But you know us by our reputation as bouncers in the Midwest, right? Like
we were the best bouncers in New York, but then we moved to the Midwest.
Gentlemen, Liam Billingham. That guy at the bar is Liam Billingham,
Liam
man.
Billingham. He couldn't beat anyone up, literally. I'm the opposite of whatever Patrick Swayze
Your reputation
is in this.
precedes you.
Okay, we're talking about Roadhouse.
Today's movie is, we probably should have said, today's movie is Roadhouse, a.k.a. it's Die Hard in a bar.
Die Hard in a bar,
kind of,
maybe.
Ish. So
why are we covering this one next, Phil?
So we're going to talk, the idea of the show that this is action movie genealogy. What we're discussing is Die Hard's influence on action cinema. So we're going in chronological order so that we can kind of track those influences and the evolution of the genre. And Roadhouse, although we're sort of half joking about it being Die Hard in a bar, there are a weird number of direct connections.
Yeah, the first one that you notice is that it says Silver Pictures.
And that's of course the most obvious one. Our Midas touch action movie producer, Joel Silver, whose fingerprints were all over the action genre in the 80s.
What else did he produce? Can you remember offhand?
He went on to do The Matrix, which is probably arguably his greatest success, and certainly in terms of box office. But before that, he'd started out with Larry Gordon doing 48 Hours and The Warriors before that. And before Die Hard, he'd done, of course, the double whammy of Predator and Lethal Weapon. So what's interesting, I think,
what
about...
a CV.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And it goes on and on and on. And he's going to be featured heavily in the show. But,
all good movies, really.
Yeah. So, let's just do a quick top-line fact check on Roadhouse just to put it in context. So it came out almost a year after Die Hard. It was released by United Artists on May 19th, 1989. Die Hard came out July 22nd, 1988. Mm-hmm. It was directed by the amazingly named Rowdy Herrington.
Who made some good movies.
Rowdy Herrington is a really interesting figure.
Striking distance.
So Joel Silver actually, when he was trying to get Rowdy Herrington to direct Roadhouse, invited him to the set of Die Hard. He was introduced to Bruce Willis, and of course, they went on to make Striking Distance a few years later. So there's a direct connection to Die Hard in that sense. But I have a theory about why Rowdy Herrington got this job, because it makes no sense. Because his previous film, Jack's Back, with James Spader, which was made the year before. I honestly think he got Roadhouse because his name is Rowdy. Because there's just no...
Rowdy is quite a name.
There is no...
Yeah, that's
I
a good
swear
name.
He was looking at a list of who was the hot directors at that moment, or who was the interesting directors, and Rowdy, because there's just no way you would look at Jack's Back and be like, he should direct
And
Roadhouse.
then he kind of followed it up with some like A Murder of Crows and a few other sort of more cerebral, thrillery action movies.
He did a movie called Gladiator,
with
not
Cuba
the Russell
Gooding
Crowe
Jr.
one. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
Was
the
a
boxing
fighting
film,
movie.
right?
Yeah,
or a fighting film, for sure.
Yeah.
So that kind of checks out. So it feels like Roadhouse is his entry point to...
certainly to this sort of mainstream. It made this sort of odd... I love Jack's Back. I think it's a really interesting, really strange, quirky movie. Mm-hmm. Very much worth checking out. But this was really his entry into the studio system and the mainstream. Because this is a star vehicle for Patrick Swayze. Let's be very clear.
Right,
this
let's
is
talk about
more
who's in the movie. Yeah.
Okay, so the movie stars Swayze, Ben Gazzara, Kelly Lynch, and Sam Elliott, amongst others.
Sam Elliott, my God.
When that comes up, when you see and Sam Elliott come up on the opening credits, doesn't that just fill your heart with joy?
It really does. He's so... God, what a man. What a man that man is. It's unbelievable.
He's been the same age for 50 years because I think he may be a Highlander. I have a theory.
I don't want to out that
him.
Accent. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's been around for centuries, just being a badass.
Cutting off heads.
Yeah. So it was screenplay was written by David Lee Henry and Hilary Hankin, based on a story by Henry, and it was made on an estimated budget of $15 million and grossed $61.6 million. So a considerable hit. But the interesting thing as well, I think, about Roadhouse is that it's had this sustained life.
Yeah.
Where it's made like hundreds of millions. Yeah. Home video was an absolute killer. Yeah. Cable plays forever. So it's had this really, really long life beyond the initial box office release.
Tell me a little bit about the DNA, the fingerprints that Die Hard has on the movies that come after it. We talked a little bit about that with Joel Silver. But what are some other ways this relates to Die Hard?
There are several Die Hard alums that are directly involved in the making of Roadhouse, even beyond Joel Silver. Has the same composer, Michael Kamen, has the same editors, Frank J. Urosti and John F. Link, has the same stunt coordinator / second unit director, Charles Piccone.
Wow.
Same costume designer, Marilyn Vance, billed here as Marilyn Vance Straker, and the same casting director, Jackie Birch. There are some direct connections. Of course, many of those will come from Joel Silver because he'll be hiring those people.
And there's a feel to it, like the Michael Kamen score. He seems to be a guy that is equally comfortable with strings and a little bit of guitar at times. I can't remember. Did he write the Lethal Weapon music?
He did.
Yeah, so it's 100%. A lot of these movies are about like sort of mulleted, violent men who have a dark side, and you feel the score in this film at moments feeling like the Lethal Weapon score.
100%. I mean, especially once you get into the third act of this movie, there's a real gear shift where you really sense the Kamen score is pretty unobtrusive until the third act.
Yes.
And then it becomes like, oh, this is like, it's almost like a Lethal Weapon temp score, and I don't mean that as a diss because I love Michael Kamen, but I think what's interesting about, I was listening to it actually on the drive over here trying to get my mind in place. I was listening to the Die Hard 2 Michael Kamen.
That's why I went and got the mullet that you see, because I wanted to really get the character.
Getting mine taken care of.
It's going to look great.
This afternoon. Got a team
getting fitted for my mullet today.
Yeah, growing a mullet for this podcast.
It's the only way to do it.
I like to commit.
Our wives are both like, you just have to stop. I don't know what you guys are doing.
But I think with Michael Kamen, when I think of his scores, to me, it's suspense. I think that's what he is amazing at creating. He has such a distinctive style that is unmistakable.
What did he follow up this with? Do you know any of the films he did? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Well, I know he did Die Hard 2 and another movie that I want to talk about, hopefully, in our next episode, which will be License to Kill.
Ooh, he did License to Kill.
Which is a really unusual
That's so strange.
Because it had been John Barry since the dawn of time, pretty much. It's kind of an outlier. But although the premise of Roadhouse, it's like, okay, it's pretty different to the classic Die Hard on a blank template that we'll be talking about with many of the direct imitators, but it does have some subtle similarities. We've got the reluctant lone hero. He's got one ally who's kind of peripheral to the action.
Sam Elliott.
The Sam Elliott character, Wade Garrett. I have to just, every time I hear it, I just have to go, gentlemen, Wade Garrett. Because I just love doing that. And he has to take on multiple adversaries and a formidable villain, and the odds are stacked against them. And the action is focused around one primary location, the Double Deuce Bar. But it isn't so much about, in terms of its influence, it's more the personnel rather than the premise in this instance.
It actually isn't a very high concept movie at all.
What I think is notable about this movie and what's interesting about it is that this is the emphasis is on character over plot. This is a star vehicle for a
you were saying,
white hot star,
right?
Who is coming off Dirty Dancing. Dirty Dancing propelled him into the stratosphere. Now what I think is really smart about why he did this movie, this is broadening his appeal to men,
right?
He obviously, women were crazy about him at this time, even on to the point that they were mobbing him on the set. There's a lot of crazy stories
Same when
about
I record
that.
a podcast.
Yeah, can you keep them? Can you keep it down out there?
Ladies,
they've seen the mullets.
Please.
So, but what I think is cool as well about this movie, one of the reasons I like it, and I kind of vaguely remember when it came out, although I was very young, it feels like a night out. It feels just like you're going to have a fun time going to see this movie.
But then it weirdly gets dark in the final third of the movie.
Absolutely.
So this is probably where I should confess that I had never seen Roadhouse until last night.
Oh, wow.
Coming in
cold.
Came in cold. I had a great time watching this movie. I think I was super into it for the first hour. And then at a certain point, no disrespect, it just lost me a little bit. It kind of never, the final half never quite got me the way that I wanted it to.
It's interesting because I love the last sort of 20 minutes of this movie, and it is a different film. But it's interesting, because I suppose the logical thing is that they have attacked all these other businesses in the town, and the Double Deuce is so symbolic to this community and to the owner, and of course to our lead character Dalton, played by Patrick Swayze, and all the people that he's made friends with. I guess that is an interesting version, but
it's funny you bring up the town, and I know we're going to go into a bit by bit.
Yeah, we're going to go through the movie. But
the movie that I thought about instead of Die Hard while watching this was like some of the Stranger Comes to Town movies that I love, like Yojimbo, which is the Akira Kurosawa movie with Toshiro Mifune about a Ronin who kind of works both sides of this town that's run by two criminal families, which was the basis for Few Dollars More with Clint Eastwood, which was the basis for Last Man Standing. The
Yes,
Bruce Willis film directed by
yeah.
Walter Hill from, I think, 1996, which
Yeah.
is about a stranger coming to a town and playing both sides of this criminal enterprise in the town itself.
Yeah, so you can certainly trace those sort of genealogical lines
Yeah.
there in an interesting way with later Bruce Willis pictures. It's interesting you mentioned the samurai thing. Of course, I think it's seen as more a neo-Western. It tends to be regarded
Right.
as as a contemporary Western. It's a classic Western premise. But in this instance, the gunslinger is a cooler, not a bouncer. Let's define our terms.
Right. What is a cooler?
So I guess the cooler is like the head of the bouncers,
And
right?
he keeps the bar cool and calm,
And
right?
he's
That's the
cool
idea. He's so
himself.
cool.
But he is cool, isn't he? Everyone else around him is hot-headed, but I do think it is it is a cool character because he is able to maintain his calm in the face of a lot of provocation, whether it's verbal or physical, that makes it's just a great part for Swayze. Because
He's great in the movie.
He's terrific.
He's really good.
You can see why he pursued this project or why he was attached to this before it was, at the more advanced stages. He was attached to it before a director was on board. It's just such a good role for him. It plays to all his strengths.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the romantic side of it. You've got the physical side of it. You've got the kind of charm, the charisma,
but also the icy kind of stare, the thing that he's good at.
He's good at kind of like a bit of complexity behind the eyes.
Yes, he really is. Yeah.
And this character has a dark past that we come to discover as well.
And weirdly, like, when they're like, he went to NYU to study philosophy.
Philosophy, yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. There's also a scene when he's reading a book by the poet Jim Harrison.
yeah,
which
yeah,
I was
yeah.
just like, this is really fascinating. Yeah, I think Swayze's holds up. The movie, he really holds, his performance throughout is like really, really strong.
Yeah,
and great.
He centers this film. It all orbits around him. But I think what's also really smart is, and Rowdy Harrington and Joel Silver were smart enough to surround Swayze with incredibly strong actors like Sam Elliott and like Ben Gazzara and Kelly Lynch.
Yeah, he's a larger-than-life character, but the movie does not take much of a larger-than-life tack.
It's funny, I was thinking about that again today, that with a lot of the Joel Silver stuff, I was thinking how they have this similar quality of kind of dark stories with a sense of humor and a smart mouth.
Yeah.
Pretty rough, tough, aggressive, serious films, but they still have a sense of fun and a sense of humor. I'd find that would be a bit unpalatable, I think, in today's climate, to have these R-rated, adult, kind of tough films with a nasty edge, but they also have this humor to balance it out. Roadhouse is slightly different in terms of on this kind of tonal spectrum, because it is this almost like a drive-in movie. And actually, you just use this expression. On the commentary, Rowdy Harrington repeatedly uses the phrase larger than life. Everything's larger than life. So there's an ongoing debate about whether the people involved were in on the joke, because this has become a, kind of so bad it's good type, tongue-in-cheek, guilty pleasure type movie.
It's less bad and less extravagant than I thought it was gonna. Like, I certainly don't think it's bad, but like,
not at all. I love it.
But the concept isn't any more ridiculous than any other sort of action movie and in fact, it's a little more grounded. Like, this is a movie about punches and kicks, not like bazookas and Commando. Like, Commando is Commando is like
that's
ridiculous,
talk about larger than life.
Yeah, larger than life, and in a way, kind of self-aware in how ridiculous it is. Roadhouse does not feel self-aware in its ridiculousness.
I think there's a blend or a mixture of intentional and unintentional comedy.
Right.
Some of it, they have to know that this is very broad. But some of it, it's hard to know. I suppose it's when you play it serious and it ends up being funny that's when like, okay, maybe where is the tonal needle kind of landing here? But so it is a bit of a strange one. But
it isn't also though, like, it isn't even the goon. I have your goons.
The Goon Guide.
Goon Guide. Okay, so there's a couple of guys. I want to talk specifically about Morgan, who's played by Terry Funk.
Yes.
Morgan is a bouncer at the Double Deuce, and he's the first person fired
He defects.
by Dalton. And even that guy, who should be preposterous, like there's something like when he's angry, you feel it. He's not treated as like a total goof. Like none of these.
Yeah,
even
Tinker. But yeah, Tinker is kind of ridiculous. And Tinker is one of my favorites, by the way. I'm a big fan. But it certainly is a motley crew of when we look at this, in our Goon Guide here, it's some wacky
I guess
characters.
it's just a little bit of a harder movie than I expected it to be. Maybe am I totally off on this? It's just not as ridiculous and silly as I expected it to be.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because you're looking at it without the fog of nostalgia.
That's true. I might be. Yeah, for sure.
You're seeing it pretty clear-eyed.
Yeah.
Let's talk our way through the story.
Let's do our plot breakdown. Let's go. All right, Phil, take it away.
So James Dalton is this legendary, played by Swayze, is this legendary cooler at the Bandstand Club in New York.
Is it? But it's New York, but it doesn't feel like New York at all.
No,
no New York
strange.
I've ever seen in my life. Like maybe outer Queens.
The state of New York,
exactly.
I think, more so than.
It does not feel like New York City at all.
No.
And they shot that in California. They shot the whole movie was shot in California.
Well, the other little piece about that opening scene that I think is interesting. So basically, Dalton is this cooler at the Bandstand Club in New York State. He's approached by Frank Tillman, played by Kevin Teig, who wants him to run security at his roadhouse in Jasper, Missouri. He is propositioned by Frank Tillman to come and work for him at his club. There's a brief negotiation, and then he decides to relocate.
And to be clear, he asks for $5,000 up front and $500 a day for an indeterminate amount of time. And it's pretty clear by the end of the movie that Swayze's staying in Jasper.
And all medical expenses paid for.
Yeah, everything is paid for, right? Yeah. So he's making off pretty well. I mean, he is risking his life, I guess.
I mean, the economics of this film probably don't bear close scrutiny.
No, his rent is $100 a month. Get out of here. That house is huge. That's bigger than my house.
So should we talk about Dalton, though, as a character?
Let's do it.
Okay, so how do we feel about him as an action movie hero?
I mean, I think he's a little preposterous, right? Like he's good at everything. He he's went to NYU for philosophy and religion, I think specifically is what they say. And there's a little bit of a thematic religion versus capitalism thing going on in this movie. That's like with Gazzara's character, which we can get into. But there's a little bit of like a polar opposites of these two guys. I think he's an interesting action hero. I think he's a little generic. I think in the hands of an actor that couldn't imbue the quiet of the character with the kind of like gravitas that I think Swayze has, I don't think it works at all. I think a lesser actor couldn't pull this off.
It is hard to imagine anybody else playing this part. It almost seems like it was just tailored so specifically for Swayze's skill set.
And he didn't do a ton of action movies after this, right? So it's kind of a strange...
Obviously, Point Break,
of course. How did I forget about Point Break?
Being the classic, but not much. He tried his hand at it. What he did Next of Kin came out.
I don't even remember that one.
Yeah, which is not one that's often talked about, but certainly Point Break.
I forgot about Point Break.
Next major movie really after this was Ghost.
Oh my God, that movie was a monster. It was so big. That was like the biggest thing that happened that year.
I mean, Swayze had this incredible, it was the old, the flame that burns, twice as bright, burns half as long thing, because he was so huge, but it was such a short run, really, between 87 and 91, between when Dirty Dancing, obviously he'd been around since The Outsiders and Red Dawn and some of those other movies, but it was Dirty Dancing that really put him into the stratosphere. And then it continued up until Point Break. And then he did this sort of slightly strange movie, City of Joy.
City of
Hope?
City of Hope. I remember that movie. Yeah, where he plays a doctor.
One is the John Sayles movie. One's
plays
the
a doctor, right?
Yeah, which I think was a passion project for him. Unfortunately, didn't do well. And then he did To Wong Fu in '95. But then
that's an action movie like cast in that movie.
We're going to do that in episode 77.
I can't wait. That's a good movie. I like that film. But as an action hero, I think not as memorable as a Martin Riggs. John McClane.
Well, it didn't get the sequels.
That's part of it too.
In a way, it's kind of strange, actually. But maybe it just feels like this story kind of closed its loop. But anyway, so yeah, he's an interesting figure in action movie history.
Right.
But it was just the one and done for old James
Absolutely.
Dalton. So Dalton goes to visit the Double Deuce to get the lay of the land, and this place is totally out of control.
What the fuck is happening in this bar, man? It's wild.
Would you want to go to the Double
No,
Deuce?
not maybe like
Maybe with a stab
2/3 of the
vest.
way through the movie, but yeah, no, it's
So the Lifehouse band there is fronted by his pal Cody, played by Canadian legend Jeff Healey.
give me a little bit on Jeff Healey. I don't know anything about Jeff Healey.
Jeff Healey was a rhythm and blues / rock and roll guitarist who was blind from a very early age and taught himself the guitar and played it in this unique style.
See, I had no idea that this guy
on
was
his lap.
a person.
Yeah,
like,
so
or a
he-
famous person, I should say.
I think it was one of those things where I think the writer knew of Jeff Healey and kind of created the character somewhat with him in mind. This blind rock and roll guitarist and singer, and I love him.
Yeah.
I think he's fantastic.
He's great in the movie.
He's great in the movie. It's such an unexpected, unusual presence.
Kind of has
He's
a
very
little brother
charming.
quality, like a kind of a
Yeah.
guy you love. And actually, it's weird that he's not more like instrumental to the plot in the second half of the movie.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's not like threatened. I mean, I guess he is, but you never
I suppose
explicitly.
so. That would have been an obvious choice, isn't it, to
Yeah.
sort of have him be threatened?
And I
But-
mean, using the blindness, especially in the 80s, as like a weakness or something where they could take advantage. Like it just feels like something you would expect from a movie like
but they
this.
don't do it.
They
It's
don't do
quite-
it at all.
Yeah, it's quite
interesting.
cool in terms of its representation in that
yeah.
regard.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So, some of the staff are friendly, like Cody. Some of them, like the aforementioned Morgan, played by Terry Funk, the head bouncer,
Morgan, right.
are more hostile. And so he realizes he's got his work cut out for him. He rents a room from the friendly farmer Emmett, played by the wonderfully named Sunshine Parker.
Oh, that guy is great.
Love, like Santa
so many
Claus,
good
right?
faces
Like-
in this movie.
Yeah, it's well
like
cast.
a really well
Yeah,
cast
yeah.
movie. Kudos to and the woman who cast
Cast Die Hard.
Jackie Birch.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I think
Nailed it again.
It's not, and again, it's not as movie star driven. I mean, obviously, besides like back then, I sound ridiculous, but like you could make an action movie with one big star and everyone else around it could be really, really interesting. And like Swayze would, kind of like anchors the movie, and then you have all these interesting faces
Yeah,
around
the choices
him. Kevin
are
T-
not
Kevin,
typical. Yeah,
Eh.
I mean, Sunshine Parker, Red West, and even Gazzara that we're going to come to and we're going to talk about. They're not obvious choices for
Right.
that moment in time. It's very creative in its casting. So, while we're on that subject, why don't we talk about? Okay, so the house where Dalton rents a room looks onto the lavish estate owned by Brad Wesley.
Brad
played by
Wesley.
the imperious Ben Gazzara. Now, I just want to step back
Okay.
and let
me warm up.
Special Agent Liam Billingham
Can I get a
take
whiskey?
the mic for his diatribe
Okay.
on Ben Gazzara.
So I did not know that Ben Gazzara was in this movie until you told me that Ben Gazzara was in this movie. Ben Gazzara is, I think, one of the great American actors of all time. Born in New York in 1930, went to the Actors Studio, did a lot of really his career spanned, he died in 2012. He was like 82 years old, died of cancer. But he sort of covered the whole range of Hollywood history. Went to the Actors Studio, lived in New York, was in, a lot of Playhouse 90, did a lot of theater, was on TV a lot, kind of started as a TV guy. Really, his first big role is he was in Otto Preminger's film Anatomy of a Murder. And
Wow.
so Anatomy of a Murder kind of set him up. And then in the 1970s, he starts his association with John Cassavetes. John Cassavetes, this could be a whole other podcast, great indie American filmmaker. And they make 3 films together, all 3 of which I think are amazing. He does Husbands, which is Cassavetes, Ben Gazzara, and Peter Falk going on a week-long bender that starts on Long Island and ends in London. Have you seen that film?
that one I'm not familiar
Oh,
with. I'm
it's
going to talk to
amazing.
you about the one I am more familiar with.
And he does a film called Opening Night where he plays a theater director, which is one of the great films about art. But the movie that I feel like is most applicable here is 1974's Killing of a Chinese Bookie, where he plays a club owner named Cosmo Vitelli who gets in deep at a casino and is told by the mobsters that run the casino that he has to go kill a guy.
Brace yourself for something fuel-nominal. Unleaded 88 is the clear fuel choice. It's cheaper, cleaner, and greener. And it's grown by Iowa corn farmers. Now that's totally worth the hype. So pump it up with Unleaded 88.
And I think it's a proto-action movie. It came out approximately in that few weeks before Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
And there's an alternate history where I think maybe had Taxi Driver not come out that year, we would be talking about Killing of a Chinese Bookie in that way. It's a very strange but truly amazing movie with some action movie sort of elements, I would say.
Yeah, so Liam put me on to this.
Right.
And I should say as well that you also, if you're interested in Cassavetes and Gazzara and all of this history, Liam has his own wonderful cast.
Called Oeuvre Busters, where the first season was all John Cassavetes. And inspired by the film Husbands, which is wonderful.
So that introduced me to Killing of a Chinese Bookie, which I watched in to contextualize it for this, and I was absolutely blown away
It's an amazing
by the
movie
movie and by Ben Gazzara's performance. And yeah, it has that a kind of descent into hell movie, I call it,
right.
that I love, like Taxi Driver or Falling Down, where it's really one
Falling Down is a wild movie.
After Hours, those kind of movies where it's just someone kind of goes down the rabbit hole and and loses their mind.
And it is, we should say, on HBO Max in both the original and director's cut version.
Yeah.
You watched both.
I did, yeah.
Wow.
Although they kind of got somewhat conflated in my own mind because
they're pretty similar. Yeah, there's a few
one
things
is significantly shorter.
Yeah, but I think the long version is the way to go. It's in terms of the character. It's a
That's
character
the one I
film
watched
like
first.
Roadhouse.
And I could have watched it for 4 hours. It was just, he had such extraordinary charisma and gravitas and was just this character that was just, the word that I think of when I think of both Ben Gazzara and the characters that he has played is formidable.
Yes.
And that's what makes him it's almost hard to overstate what a big deal it is to cast him in a movie like this that is somewhat of it's an action movie, it's a studio movie, but it's fairly light.
Yeah.
It's an R and everything, but it's an R-rated movie, but it's not like a serious film.
No.
And it's almost like
he's a thespian.
It's almost like getting Daniel Day-Lewis to play the villain.
It's interesting. Yes, I agree. What I love about him as an actor is he has an inherent softness when you look at him. Like, there's something about the way he smiles and the way he feels like he could be your grandfather, but then he has this thing he can turn on that is so menacing and so creepy, and he's like a teddy bear to me in some ways, and that's what makes him so appealing as Cosmo Vitelli, is that in Killing of a Chinese Bookie, is that you're in love with him as a character. And he's pathetic.
Yeah,
kind of not.
It doesn't make sense in a way.
It makes no sense, but he's so lovable and scary at the same time.
He is so dimensional and complex as an actor that the other thing that's strange about this, we talked a little bit about this with like Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman in terms of the physicality or the lack thereof for the villain. You don't think that maybe Swayze versus Gazzara in a hand-to-hand fight is not going to be necessarily much of a fight on paper. Yet Gazzara has such intensity and he is so frightening. And certainly if you've seen Killing of a Chinese Bookie, where he is just so physically tough.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that they put Swayze in the prime of his youth, martial artist, very physical, against this older guy, and yet it does hang together, I think, because Gazzara is just so strong as an actor.
He's so strong as an actor. When there's a scene where he punches one of his henchmen, and it's kind of, he's 60 years old in this movie. It's kind of lacks a little credit. Like, it doesn't really look like that. Like, he's a 60-year-old man punching someone. But there's something about his energy and his power that really, really works in the film. Also, this movie does have the thing that a lot of films in the 80s do, which is the henchman, the like guy who I forget his name.
Jimmy Reno.
Jimmy Reno.
Played by Marshall Teague.
Yeah, Jimmy Reno.
Terrific henchman.
Who has a mullet, who's kind of like the Carl to Gazzara's Hans Gruber,
Lethal Weapon,
or the Busey, the Mr.
the classic,
Joshua. I forget the main villain. Yeah. But there is that bit of like, that's the guy who's going to provide the physical challenge, and Gazzara provides the kind of emotional, or he has all this power over the town, and which is why when you say Die Hard on a town. Die Hard in a bar. To me, it actually feels more like Die Hard in a town.
Yeah. It's probably a better way to put it. Yeah.
He's fighting these guys who, like, Gazzara plays this sort of self-made man who kind of like is the unofficial mayor of the town. And a town, by the way, that doesn't seem to have a police force.
Yeah.
Swayze literally rips a guy's throat out and is never investigated or arrested for murder.
Happily accept a very flimsy explanation at the end. But they do allude to it in one scene where they say basically that Gazzara's character, Brad Wesley, has kind of paid off the police. He has them in his pocket. But I think he is one of the reasons, a low-key reason why this film endures, because he is a fantastic villain. He's jealous, controlling, vain. He rocks a pink robe like you would not believe.
Yeah. Drinks I love when Swayze shows up at the house and he's like, Bloody Mary. It's like, I love villains like that. That's something that I think is great about these movies.
It's also
They're
interesting,
charming and charismatic.
The Cosmo Vitale thing as well, because he mentions there's one scene where in that scene where Swayze goes to the house, there is a hint at Brad Wesley's backstory, because he says, like, I relate to you. Like, I came up hard on the streets of Chicago, and he's a Korean War veteran. He says, when I came back from Korea,
it's my favorite scene in the movie.
Isn't Cosmo Vitale? I think that's
Cosmo.
He was a
you're
war
right.
vet,
He is
right?
well, there's a scene in.
It's almost like an extension of the same character.
No, that's a really. I did not make that connection. No, absolutely, he's a war vet, because there's a scene in Killing of a Chinese Bookie where they're these guys who are terrible, played by, among others, amazing actors. Seymour Cassel.
Yes.
Talked to him about how he killed during the Korean War. Yeah, for sure. He's that age. It totally makes sense.
It feels like either Silver or Rowdy Harrington was a big fan of Killing of a Chinese Bookie, because it feels like they built this character. It feels very close to that character. Almost
I
like
never would have made
an
that
inversion
connection.
of it or an extension of it.
Fantastic.
So Dalton lays down the law to the staff once he gets to.
He fires a couple.
He fires Morgan, the aggressive bouncer. Right. He fires a drug dealing waitress. And he explains his philosophy and his
Be
rules.
Nice.
I love that.
Be nice. Just be nice
until it's time to not be nice. I mean, that is kind of like a pretty good credo for life.
It also establishes him as like not a hothead action hero, which I think is good. Like
unlike Riggs, as you were saying,
right?
You know, or even McClane. McClane is not a hothead, but he is impulsive, and
the circumstance dictated. But yes, you're right. He's fighting for his survival, and he kind of does things on impulse. And like you pointed out, kind of as a terrorist when he puts the body in the elevator.
Yeah, psychological warfare. Well, Dalton is much more cool-headed, calm, the Zen bouncer, right?
But we do learn later in the film that it is probably there to suppress a real killer instinct.
Which makes him kind of interesting. The one thing I was going to say about this scene, though, where Dalton goes into the bar and kind of lays down his philosophy to the staff, and the staff are all sitting there. It's kind of like those shows like Bar Rescue or the Gordon Ramsay like Hell on Wheels show or The Prophet, where those reality shows where like a troubleshooter goes in to fix a failing business.
For sure.
You know?
This is like the precursor to Kitchen Confidential.
What a reality show that would be.
Oh,
like
my
Dalton
God.
goes into different bars.
Listen, Phil, don't say that out loud, because someone in Hollywood is now going to make Roadhouse the reality show or something like that.
Just give me an EP credit.
Yeah, that's
just
fine.
Send me the check.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're absolutely right.
You do you. But it is interesting because it's like he goes in, diagnoses the problem, you identify which staff members are on board, which are not, which are a detriment, which are a benefit, and you build a new culture, essentially. So it was kind of interesting from that
One of the more interesting things about the movie,
Yeah.
for sure. They're weird, there is this, interesting core to this movie, which is, what exactly is his job? Again, I thought he was just a bouncer. I didn't know he was like, I'm gonna, build this bar back up, and which is what happens over the course of the movie. He sort of turns the bar into first of all, I don't know where all those people are coming from that show up. It's like there's 500 people at the door to go into the bar. 3 people live in this town. Where are all these people coming from? Again, 80s action movie. But yeah, he has an interesting job, and he's sort of fighting a culture war against this ruthless kind of mob bossy guy running the town who's sort of skimming off the top of all the businesses and patting himself while everyone has to pay him out.
And the other part of it that connects to Brad Wesley and why it makes their dynamic interesting is the character of Dr. Elizabeth Clay, played by Kelly Lynch, who Dalton meets when he gets into one of his many skirmishes and has to go.
He can't do his own stitches this time.
Right. That one line, the line "pain don't hurt." I really do have some syntax problems and some just I can't. I'm all on board for be nice until it's time not to be nice, but pain don't hurt. I just can't wrap my head around.
It's a weird
that
line.
one.
It's a weird line. Yeah, again, it's like this thing. Swayze really pulls it off, but this character has some strange quirks. Not even strange quirks, but it doesn't all necessarily
I just feel like there could have been a line there that was more like pain. I mean, the bad version is the pain is a state of mind, or some sort of something that had a some more
Well, 'cause he's a
philosophical.
philosopher,
yeah,
right?
Like, give us a bit of your philosophy there, but pain don't hurt. Well, it does. I mean,
Yeah, like it's pain.
It's fun.
Yeah. Like, what are you
Your
suggesting?
pain receptors, that is
Yeah.
what they do. So, not to be too literal, but that was one that I was a little bit like, could have done with another pass on that line.
Yeah, I agree.
So he meets Elizabeth Clay because he's been injured, but she ends up having a backstory with Brad Wesley, which kind of complicates things.
They were together.
Well,
or that he
it
was in
just
love
that
with her,
he-
right?
Yeah, he was had a fixation on her, and
Right.
he went crazy when she left town.
There's
so
a scene, very weird scene in the film where Gazzara watches
there's a lot of watching.
watches Swayze and Kelly Lynch have sex on the roof of his house,
Yeah.
because the room that Swayze rents is, I don't know if we said this, is right across from Brad Wesley's like palatial estate or whatever, it's right
So
across the
they're
street.
peeping,
they're
peeping
just
each
looking
other
at
out
It's
all
weird.
the time.
It's
Yeah.
weird. And he's just like,
Yeah.
also, why
There's a lot
are they
of
having...
peeping in
It's
this
weird
movie.
that they have sex on the roof. It's weird that he's like, oh, the guy's right over there, but that's fine. Don't worry about it. It's weird.
So that adds a little bit of spice to their kind of
Yeah.
their kind of feud. Dalton also discovers that Wesley's, as he starts to unearth Wesley's protection scheme, and he meets people in the town like Red West, the owner of the auto parts store.
Red
and
West,
some of the
good
other,
name.
Some of the other folks in the town. He realizes that Brad Wesley really has this town in a stranglehold, and he calls his old friend and mentor Wade Garrett,
Played by
Sam Elliott, the immortal Highlander.
Pop quiz for you.
yes,
What
sir.
other film were Ben Gazzara and Sam Elliott in together?
Oh, would that be The Big Lebowski?
Oh, good for you. You nailed it. Yeah, great movie.
Took me a moment.
Great
Yeah.
movie. Hey, dude.
What a legend. I love Sam Elliott.
Yeah,
I think he's
he's
just
great.
wonderful.
He's great.
He's a great presence in this film. He gives it real warmth. Again, gravitas. So even though when Dalton calls him, he doesn't say like, "Hey, I need help." It's kind of a read between the lines thing.
It's a
He's-
check-in, but yeah, it implies something
But
else.
Wade
might be happening.
knows Dalton. Wade is kind of Dalton's mentor. He knows him well enough to know. Okay, he wouldn't be calling me unless there was something going down.
One of the
here.
things that's preposterous about this movie, but never played for laughs, is like when Dalton shows up at the bar for the first time. First of all, the fact that a cooler has a rep. I guess if you like
That's
know the
Dalton,
bar
man.
scene, yeah, everyone like, why is this guy a
Fucking guy at the
celebrity?
bar's Dalton, man.
Yeah, like why is you're great at this? Why would anyone know who this guy is? And by extension,
love
when
it,
Wade
though.
Garrett shows up, people are like, "That's Wade Garrett." It's like,
Holy
what? Is
shit.
there like Cooler Monthly
I love it.
magazine?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what
How
are these people?
This is pre-internet.
It
How
makes
is
no sense.
Yeah, I would love to know. But, it kind of reminds me of like high school or like Big Fish in a Small Pond
Yeah.
kind of thing where certain people have these huge reputations, but it's sort of weirdly disproportionate.
It makes
to-
no sense.
But yet this is like across the country,
Yeah.
across the continental United States.
It's Dalton. What? Like, it just doesn't. It makes
But
no sense.
yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
It is fun. It is
So
fun.
Wade comes in with a similarly big reputation, and he helps Dalton out because Wesley is interfering with the liquor delivery. So even though they're starting to clean up the bar now,
They can't get
Wesley, which is very much a Western.
For sure.
The kind of trope.
Big thing in Yojimbo, there's no food in the town. They're starving people out in that film.
Right.
Yeah.
So the isolation of it and all the rest of it. Yeah. So now, okay. So eventually Wade, Dalton, and Dr. Elizabeth Clay go on a night out together. Would you want to be on that night out with those?
I mean, like, sort of,
lunatics.
I would prefer to be like at another table, sort of watching the whole thing play out. It's a weird, they start at the Double Deuce, right? And then they end up somewhere else,
They go to like a
diner,
at
but
like,
that serves
it's like,
booze.
But it's like by now the sun has come up, and he's like he has a slow dance with her. It doesn't look like the most awesome bar crawl ever.
Also, I gotta be honest. This is a doctor who does stitches on people, and she's like, my shift starts in a few hours.
I
Like,
do not want her
Yeah, I'm not
operating on me
comfortable.
or
Like,
doing anything.
she's like, listen, I gotta do a surgery in a couple hours, so I should go get some sleep. Like, what? Like, you have to go to bed at 8:00. I'm all for you having a nice time, but like, doctors, I didn't sleep well last night, and I am like, woof through today.
Yeah.
I'm not doing surgery.
I don't want to judge Dr. Elizabeth Clay, but
It's
I'm sure
not.
that's the
it's
most
not-
it's
yeah.
the most responsible behavior for
No, it's
for a medical
irresponsible.
practitioner.
And she's also dating a guy who's going to die of a stab wound
Right.
soon, probably.
So they have a kind of rowdy night out. We get to see more than probably we wanted of Sam Elliott's anatomy during the
Oh
course
yeah,
of that.
yeah. What
in
a
the course of that
handsome
night.
fella, though.
But yeah,
Woof.
I mean,
Yeah.
So they go on a bit of a rager, but we learn through this conversation that Dalton has a dark past in Memphis, and what he's actually done is, which is pretty dark, had an affair with a married woman, didn't know she was married, and ended up the husband confronted him with a gun, and Dalton killed him by
Right.
ripping his throat out. And this is something he's never been able to get over. It's also something that Wesley uses against Dalton.
He's like, you got to get over it. Oh, Brad Wesley uses
Brad
it
Wesley
against him.
used it against him
There's
later.
this scene where Elliot's like, you got to get over it. You got to move
Yeah.
on with your life. And it's like, I don't know.
Cut
I
it
don't
the
know if I
fuck
could
loose.
I don't know if I could get on with my life after I ripped a dude's
it is
throat
funny
out.
how Sam Elliott gives this very kind of reasonable and impassioned like account, but it's like, I'm not sure you should get over it.
Yeah, no, I think
like,
that-
I'm not sure. Like, hey, look, Liam, I know you
I
had
know
an
you
affair with a
killed it.
married woman and then ripped his throat out,
Yeah.
committed murder. Get over, move
Yeah,
on.
move on. Life goes on, man.
Like,
but again,
it's
like
no
one
biggie.
of the things,
Shit happens.
one of the things that's preposterous about this movie that's played so straight,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like it's interesting. Again, it feels a little like again, the Joel Silver produces Lethal Weapon, also a movie about a mulleted man with a checkered past, but like in Lethal Weapon. He's like crazed. It's crazy. And in some ways, this just feels like a less, like a sort of more, what's the word? Late 80s version of Lethal Weapon, because it doesn't have the Vietnam veteran thing that Lethal Weapon has that I think really runs through those movies. Like, it doesn't have the same degree of darkness. And so there's times in the movie where I guess I feel like the tone is a bit off. Like, it should be a little sillier than it is.
The tone, yeah, definitely.
He rips a guy's throat out.
It's inherently there's an absurdity to
Yeah,
it. Whereas,
but played
Lethal
straight.
Weapon has Die Hard. The tone is nailed on, consistent.
Yeah.
The tone here is kind of bizarre, and you because you have characters that are that good, like Sam Elliott and Ben Gazzara, but the motivations and some of the dialogue is sort of just strange and not really believable. This does feel like it doesn't really take place in kind of the real world. It takes place almost in the language of movies, the language of westerns. It's almost just like outside of time and space in a weird way.
Yeah.
There's also no guns until right at the end. There's no guns or car chases or any of the typical or helicopters.
And actually,
the typical imagery that we've come to expect from the Joel Silver action movies at the time.
Let's get there because I know that's part of the plot summary, but I have a lot of thoughts on the guns at the end of the movie.
All right. Well, basically, so as sort of we move into the second half of Act 2, Brad Wesley now really declaring war on the town. He takes out Red's store in an arson attack.
Right.
The auto parts store.
Red,
He
a
makes,
great, instantly sympathetic character in an action movie, by the way.
Yeah, he's great. And he also has an interesting backstory, that guy, because he was Elvis's best friend and his bodyguard in real life, which is an interesting...
That is really interesting.
Kind of strange history. So Wesley's now kind of stepping up his vendetta against Dalton and the town. There's a great scene where he makes this territorial display in the bar, sends Jimmy into his number one henchman, Jimmy Reno, in to challenge Wade. It's all starting to kind of heat up. The local businessmen get together to be like, what are we going to do? And that's to your point about, like, do we call the police? And they even talk about calling the FBI, but then they'd have to take the stand against Wesley.
Right.
So
he controls the town.
He controls the town in
Right.
every way. His tentacles are everywhere. Then there's the iconic Bigfoot destruction scene where
forgot about the monster
You can't be
truck.
too mad at a movie
But
with a monster
again,
truck.
like, there's just a monster truck in this movie, and no one goes like, "That's weird."
What's also cool is they're just like driving it around, chilling before they get to the
I
scene.
know.
Like, it's just like, yeah, we have a monster truck. Like,
What's the big deal?
Yeah,
yeah. Why wouldn't you have a monster truck? Lady, it's Jasper.
yeah.
What happens in Jasper stays in Jasper.
If only it did. So the Bigfoot destroys the car dealership, but still Dalton doesn't want to back down. And then I have to say, I did think this was a really well-directed scene because by now it's a pissing contest between these two guys that's probably going to be very destructive for everyone. And Doc, the Kelly Lynch character, goes to Dalton's room and says, like, look, I think she's learned about his past at this point.
Yeah.
She's sort of got second thoughts about him. Maybe he's a darker
He's a killer.
character than, he's literally a killer.
The tone of the movie really shifts here.
And this is where it shifts. And I do think this is a great piece of direction because while she is screaming at him, like, who is going to save the town? You think you're going to save the town from Wesley? Who's going to save us from you?
Yeah.
In the background, the farmhouse explodes
Right.
out the window, and it's really, really well directed because you kind of don't expect it. It's a really effective moment, and this is where there is a gear shift, and this is when it becomes a straight up Joel Silver action movie. The Michael Kamen score kicks in. Dalton pursues Jimmy Reno, loving the maniacal laugh on the motorcycle as he pulls away. It's one of my favorite pieces of maniacal laughter.
Yeah.
Like, just in case anybody didn't know that he was like...
It's like tie a lady to a train tracks now kind of thing.
Full on, if he had a mustache, it would
he'd be
a
twirling.
team of
He'd be
people
twirling it. Exactly.
twirling it.
He'd have a team of twirlers.
Dalton intercepts him on the motorcycle, and then it's a straight up Lethal Weapon
Intercepts
fight.
him by running.
Yes.
Like, runs fast enough to tackle a guy off a motorcycle, which feels very Riggs and Lethal Weapon.
Yes. Well, this is where it is straight up Lethal Weapon territory for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They're fighting by the lake, hand-to-hand combat. There's the
It's
burning...
a pretty quick scene, but it goes. Yeah, it's like a real fight. It
the
feels...
Kamen music is now, like, has moved from being unobtrusive to being, like...
It's the climax of Lethal Weapon.
100%. That's a pretty great fight, and it ends with Dalton ripping out Jimmy Reno's throat.
He doesn't cut his throat. He just rips it out.
He just rips
like
it out.
With
he rips out his trachea.
With his fingers.
Yes.
He claws into the guy's throat. And
There is... Apparently, this is theoretically possible.
How much research did you do? Like a couple weeks.
I don't want to say too much in case I get in
like,
trouble with the
don't come
law.
to my house.
But I've tested.
God.
No.
They were dead already.
Apparently there are some stories that they believe this is theoretically possible.
It's so upsetting.
Pretty horrific. And then it moves into really the kind of end game where Dalton then realizes he's got to take Gazzara out. He's got to take Brad Wesley out. And I have to say, I think this is the scene where Dalton drives... Well, I should say, of course, he finds out that Sam Elliott's character has been murdered.
Yeah. He's dead on the bar.
Yes, actually, before he goes to the house. Now, and this is actually where the ticking clock kicks in, and it's a pretty cool one because this is ticking clock being one of the elements of our anatomy of an action movie. What happens is Brad Wesley calls Dalton and gives him an impossible choice. He says, "I'm going to kill either Wade Garrett or Dr. Clay."
Wade
Garrett. He's either going to kill his best friend or his girl.
Yeah.
So he's given this impossible dilemma.
Shades of the Dark Knight.
Yes, yeah. Sophie's Choice, right? Yeah, just he puts him in.
It's a lot more of a classy reference than mine, Phil. Thanks a lot.
Well, just classic trope.
I'm cutting this out.
So yeah, what does he do? He's now put on the horns of this impossible dilemma. He comes back to the Double Juice. He goes looking for Doc. He comes back to the Double Juice to find Wade dead with a knife stuck in his chest, and the helpful note. It was tails because he tosses a coin to decide. He doesn't say who he's going to... Brad Wesley doesn't say who he's going to kill.
Pretty dark.
He tells Dalton, "I'll just toss a coin and you'll find out soon enough." So...
He was never going to kill her, though.
Well, he was in love with her, wasn't he? But,
yeah.
You never know because he's so crazy, though.
He is crazy.
But what we now have is a rageful Dalton deciding, okay, this is it. This is the last straw. I have to take Brad Wesley out.
He needs revenge.
His place. Yeah, it's full on revenge, and we get to this pretty terrific stunt with the Mercedes. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that?
So this is actually the moment that I wanted to talk about. It's a cool stunt, but all of a sudden the henchmen who, like, to this point in the movie are just kind of bruisers, all having guns and starting to shoot. Like, it feels a little bit like a different movie.
Yes,
like,
it does.
One thing about action movies that I think is critical is, like, you establish early what kind of action movie you're going to have, right? And, like, I think this is particularly true then. Like, Lethal Weapon opens with the first action sequence is kind of the tree sequence when not the tree sequence, but he's buying cocaine from the
Christmas
guys.
Trees, yeah.
Christmas trees. And, like, there's a lot of gunplay, but not a lot of guns go off, and it's a little physical. Die Hard also similarly is a gun movie. There's some physical hand-to-hand combat, and I feel like Roadhouse shifts from a kick and punch
brawling movie
to a gun movie, and I felt like it pulled me out of. Again, we're watching these movies through the lens of action cinema, so I'm thinking about this stuff, and it just felt like a different movie to me.
I agree that it feels like a different movie, but it's a movie I love.
Fair, and that's totally fair.
That's how I feel about it. Like,
it might need to escalate to this point in the story.
This is where I have to say I do think that the last 15 minutes are really, really well done.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, it is a different movie, but I think it's actually a better movie to some extent. It's really well choreographed. That Mercedes stunt, I think, is a real banger. I mean,
Yeah.
so the Mercedes, he drives his Mercedes, which of course he's kept out of sight the whole time because he doesn't want anyone messing up his nice car, and he's making a lot of enemies. But now he's so crazy he doesn't care. But he drives the Mercedes pretty much into Brad Wesley's house, but of course it explodes spectacularly because it's been shotgunned. It's a brilliant
Oh, it's been
stunt.
shotgunned, it's been handgunned, it's
Yeah.
been machine guns.
It's a terrific stunt. And now we have the end game with Dalton trying to take out Brad's goons inside Brad's house.
But you don't see him in the car ever, right? Just
No.
at the beginning of the sequence. And then he's kind of in the house and he's already knocked a few of them down, correct?
Yeah, because it was actually cut for time.
Yeah.
So that's why it feels slightly abrupt. Because it was
wanted
actually
to-
a longer sequence.
I wanted to ask you because my version of the movie that I streamed had like dips to black and fades back up in it. And I was wondering if the version that I saw on AMC Plus or wherever was pulled from TV or something
Very
like that. There are
possibly.
fade outs and fade ups that feel like commercial breaks in the movie.
That does not feel like the version that I watched.
So I'm really
Blu-ray, so
yeah. So I was really curious, and then I checked the runtime, and it's an hour 54. So I was like, okay, I'm not probably missing anything here.
I think
but-
there are definitely a bunch of different versions, but there were also things that were cut for time. Hence why Keith David has one line in the movie and had an entire, but and is credited quite high in the opening credits. But
Did he
was
have a whole
almost
backstory?
Yeah, and it was completely cut.
Oh,
out.
bummer.
Yeah.
Keith David's so good.
Yeah, he's great. So, yeah, it's basically now the final showdown, and Dalton takes out the goons, most of the goons, and it ends up being mano a mano with Brad Wesley, which is interesting how they had to address this challenging issue of, well, how do we have our hero beating up a 60-year-old
How
man?
old is Swayze? Like 35?
I get something like that, I would guess, right,
Yeah.
at this point. You
yeah,
know?
so it's not even a contest. It's like if we fought, I'd kick
But
your
the
ass.
way that they do it's kind of like, yeah, of course. So the way...
Just kidding, I would lose. Just to be clear.
the
I'm
way,
a coward.
the way they do it is quite skillful because but Brad Wesley gets off a shot, so Dalton is injured.
Right.
But then he's throwing around spears.
Oh, the spear. That's
which
so weird.
is really weird.
But also, what an eccentric weirdo like that would do.
And it kind of makes sense because he's. I just wish they'd maybe seeded this trophy room and this idea that Brad Wesley collects trophies because it's a cool arena for the final battle.
I agree. It would be weird if Brad Wesley ended up being the Predator.
Oh yeah, that would be a great
What a twist! Yeah, it would be cool.
He suddenly Brad Wesley just like has an invisibility cloak.
Or he like pulls out a musket and throws it to Patrick Swayze and is like, take
Yes.
it, and walks away.
Oh, I'm loving this. The
Roadhouse is actually a
extended
Predator,
cinematic universe.
a badass, or the Predator extended
Why
cinematic
didn't Silver,
universe.
connect the dots?
Huge
there?
mistake. There should have been a Predator in every single Joel Silver movie produced
Yeah,
after
totally.
1984.
That would. I'd kind of buy Ben Gazzara as the Predator. Actually, that's the same kind of gravitas. So the other moment that's amazing about this sequence, which I just have to reference, is my favorite goon, Tinker.
You love Tinker. John William Young. Was he in any other films?
No, he hadn't really had much. Of a
One and done. I mean, you do this part. Why would you?
Yeah,
I
like,
retire.
Just end at the top. Like
You know, the
just
funny thing is, he probably
walk
like
away.
worked at the bar that they like near the set or something like that.
But he has this ridiculous. This is what we're talking about with the terms of the tone, because now we're into a sort of Lethal Weapon style, gritty, violent, visceral action sequence, and in the middle of it, Tinker is confronted by a stuffed polar bear that he's inexplicably terrified of, and goes. As this polar bear falls on
I
him.
totally forgot about that part.
And it's like it's ludicrous,
It's so
cartoonish. So it does speak to this. Even within sequences, the tone is
all over the place
all
a
over.
little bit. A little bit.
Is batshit.
Imagine if Gazzara had actually been the Predator. We'd be having a very different conversation.
So and then it ends.
He kills. Well, he doesn't kill. He doesn't kill
That's
him.
what's really interesting, and I have to. I
think
do
this is good.
This is a great.
I think it's a
moment.
great
Well, tell me
choice.
your thoughts on the finale.
Well, why don't you set it up, and then I'll say this.
So
Because you're better at this.
Dalton
than me.
has a chance to kill Brad Wesley and he is on the verge of ripping his throat out. He's in a full-on red rage, but
As you
something
do.
in him, as you do when your buddy Sam Elliott has been killed.
Right. I hate it when that happens.
Yeah, which no one likes. He's going to rip out his trachea of this old man. But he finds his humanity in this moment. Also, Doc is inexplicably there and is like, oh, I wouldn't really like this. I don't really want to see this because I thought you were nice. So Dalton decides.
First time she meets the guy, he has like 3 stab wounds. She's like, "Oh, you're such a
Yeah.
you did philosophy at NYU, right? No
Yeah,
career
but
prospects and getting slashed.
The mullet heals all sins. That's all
true.
all
That's
I'll
weird.
say.
You have that tattooed on your arm,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
On my forearm, yeah, just to keep me focused.
Yeah. When
So-
you saw Memento, you went in a very different direction.
So Dalton decides not to rip out Brad Wesley's trachea, and then Wesley actually decides, okay, well, you're weak, I'll take advantage of it, goes for his gun, and then the townsfolk shotgun him to death, who have decided they've discovered their courage.
Right.
And it is a great line because earlier on, Brad Wesley had said when he'd ran over the guy's car store with the Bigfoot monster truck, he says, "This is my town, and don't you forget it." And before Kevin Tighe, Frank Tillman, the bar owner, the owner of the Double Deuce, fires at Wesley, he says, "This is our town, don't you forget it." Blasts him into the coffee table. It's a great,
It's a much more interesting choice. Again, like
very Western though, right?
Very
like-
Western.
and is that type of thing in the samurai movie, or is it more about the lone? Is any of those elements?
well, so it's a
the
good
town
question.
rising up.
Town rising up, yeah, is definitely part of it. I mean, I think that like really what it is like what I like about these movies is that they're fighting for the soul of a civilization,
Yes.
right? And you know, one thing that I wish
By shotgunning people.
Yeah, by shotgunning people. I wish Roadhouse had a scene that established, and it kind of does this with the once you get into the monster truck sequence and the car thing. I wish there was a sequence where like the hardware store owner had like told explicitly like over there that's the car dealership, it's owned by this person. Over
Right.
here that's Brad Witt. Like I would have liked to establish the town square of the
Yeah.
story because I think they could have done candidly, and I think the ending really works, a better job of setting up the opposition because it's really only personified by the hardware store owner until the end of the film. A little bit with Frank Tillman, the guy who owns the Double Deuce. There is in all these movies, kind of like by the end, the townspeople are on the side of the drifter or whatever the case is. But this really explicitly goes there for it. You know, the samurai films, particularly Yojimbo, they're about Toshiro Mifune's sort of like nameless warrior kind of traveling from place to place and getting involved with intrigues. And by the way, Roadhouse could totally have 10 sequels. He could go to town, and there could always be some conflict.
I think they kind of missed a trick with it. But what's also interesting in the ending, after the townsfolk rise up and kill Brad Wesley and expunge the evil from their midst, it ends with a scene with Dalton and Doc naked in the lake. So Dalton has presumably decided to stay in the town, unlike a samurai movie or a western where usually they
becomes
move
a
on.
guy. Yeah,
it's almost like the Garden of Eden reborn,
Right.
baptismal, and he stays in the town, and so it's kind of
and he
unusual.
crucially is no longer the killer. So the whole
Right.
movie, if you, I
He's
actually
cleansed of his sins,
right?
literally,
He's cleansed,
right?
and I don't think the movie necessarily does an amazing job of establishing this. But at a certain point in the movie, when we feel like the tone shifts, it becomes like, is this guy any different from the killers? And it takes the movie a little too long to establish that for that to ultimately, I think, pay off emotionally. But yeah, at the end of the movie, he's made a choice to not be a killer.
Right.
And so he's, as you said, is sort of baptized and the town is reborn, like lacking corruption and like kind of like rampant capitalist mode
Right.
of Gazzara's character, right? But yeah, the ending feels a little abrupt to me too. They're like,
well,
and then they're dancing at the Double Deuce, right?
And because you don't want to think about it too much. You don't want to think about the consequences
You're right.
of the law enforcement repercussions of how the police seem to quite willingly and easily accept a pretty far-fetched account that nobody saw anything as 7 people are standing around a dead
need
body.
like a hapless sheriff or something like that, like a character that can sort of establish that the law is,
or even like the sheriff being like knowing kind of what's going on but being powerless to do anything about it.
Yeah.
And the sheriff kind of has
like
a knowing
corrupt
look
or something like that.
or just ambiguous in some way
Right.
where but I mean we're splitting hairs. I love this movie.
Oh, it's a great movie.
And it's a great
Yeah.
great last 15 minutes.
These nitpicks are like a little bit more like getting into we're talking about action movies, but I do think it's ultimately a pretty successful movie and like a total blast to watch from end to end. And like, I mean, just the quality of actors in this movie is just off the chain. It's out of control. The
And
people who are in this
something I think about a lot with a lot of these action movies, particularly of the 80s, the cardinal sin is to be boring. It can
100%.
be tonally inconsistent, tasteless, all kinds of other things, but as long as it's entertaining. Look at Cobra, right?
Right.
Like from 1986's Stallone classic Cobra. The film makes absolutely no sense, but it is wildly entertaining. Big hit.
Yeah, the struggle that I have with a lot of newer movies, without being specific, but like big budget action movies, a lot of the time I don't feel invested in the characters or like really all that deeply entrenched, or like I'm second screening it, like I'm looking at my phone as like Roadhouse. I was watching.
If nothing else, it is entertaining, and that's the that's the point. So. Should we move on to the awards?
Let's give it some awards. Let's do the awards. Let's talk about our action movie awards. The Die Hard Oscars.
Indeed. Just get your tuxedo on.
Let me
just sort your
just
tie out.
Button this up.
Yeah, that looks good.
I zip up my fly. I don't know why
good.
it's down. It's embarrassing.
So you're dressed like Cosmo Vitelli.
Oh my
You
God!
got your three women
also,
here.
Sorry, other thing. That is a great LA movie. That is a great LA movie.
Yeah.
I
Scuzzy
love
LA in the 70s.
It's a different movie, but the scene where at the beginning when he goes to the bar and like has a few drinks in the middle of the day, and he says, I forget what he says. He's like, "I'm the luckiest man alive." Whatever he says to the woman in the bar, I'm like, oh, this is such a scuzzy LA.
I'm obsessed with Cosmo Vitelli's like the Paris number,
right?
And the whole like his cabaret acts like bad LA theater that he thinks is
like, well, it's
high
like
art.
Yeah, he thinks it's art. It's so beautiful.
We're talking about Killing of a Chinese Bookie. In case you've lost our thread
on
here.
The way when he's on the way to the killing, he stops and calls, and he's like, "How are the numbers going?" It's one of the best scenes in the whole movie. It's so great because all he cares about is his club.
Absolutely,
there's something
wonderful.
Sort of like pathetic and beautiful, Falstaffian about this guy. I don't even know. Anyway, that's for a separate.
If you want more on that, please check out Liam's podcast.
Or watch Killing.
Busters.
We should just do a Killing of a Chinese Bookie episode. I'll watch it again and again.
For our Patreon.
Let's do these awards.
All right.
The John McClane Yippee-Ki-Yay, motherfucker, Award for Best Quip. Who are the nominees?
Well, be nice.
Be nice. I thought you were telling me like before I give you
sorry,
numbers, be
that
nice.
sounded as it was a dictate.
Liam,
it was
be nice.
It was in quotes.
Yeah.
Be nice.
Be nice.
Pain don't hurt. Nobody ever wins a fight.
That's a good line. That's a very
that one. I wish Pain don't hurt had been more like that.
There is this kind of like samurai thing to this character where he like offers maxims or ideas that are really interesting. Pain don't hurt is not.
That's
is
just not in keeping.
But no one
with
ever
that
wins
standard.
a fight.
Nobody ever wins a fight is a great.
It's a great line
great
for
piece
sure.
of philosophy.
Yep.
Tails again. I love that bit where he stabs Ketchum, the goon Ketchum, with the knife that had. In revenge for Sam Elliott's death, he was also killed with a knife. But my shall I say what my favorite is?
Yeah, I think I know what it is.
I used to fuck guys like you in prison.
Yeah.
Talk about economical backstory.
Right.
Like that is and Joel Silver came up with that line.
Oh, it's such a good line.
And it really is it's filthy, it's depraved, but we learn a lot about that character in one line.
It's like the action movie equivalent of Ernest Hemingway's For Sale Baby Shoes Never Worn. Like it really is. You know that great write a line.
It's just so much information in one.
Yeah, I really took me like
line,
5 seconds to process that line, and I wrote it down while I was watching the movie. I wrote because I also don't think you would ever hear that in a movie now, which is unfortunate. Like because it's you're
just going for it. You know, I mean, but that. Until that point, Jimmy Reno doesn't really have much of a character beyond being a cool henchman with some skills. But when he says that, suddenly it gives him like, wow, okay, there's more. It gives him a bit more dimension, and it's kind of interesting. Obviously, it's also kind of an absurd line, but it's kind of within the context of this movie.
Yeah,
it's kind of genius.
It is genius. It works really, really well.
My vote.
I would vote 100%. I agree with you there. Another line that's not a great quip, but a line that I wrote down is towards the end. Gazzara says to Swayze, "This town is big enough for the both of us," which I feel like really speaks to Gazzara. My favorite scene in the movie is the scene when Gazzara gives him his backstory, the Korean War sequence, because that's the moment when you really understand like who these guys are. Like everyone works for Ben Gazzara, and Ben Gazzara's like, "Why don't you come work for me at my club?" And Swayze's like, "There's no amount of money too much," and it really sets up this like philosopher versus this like unfettered capitalist, right? Like the idea that, like, it's not like he's a small business owner. He's bleeding this town dry, right? But I love the moment where he says, this town is big enough for both of us, because it feels like a reflexive thing for an action movie. Because the whole joke is this town ain't big enough for the both of us. I love that they choose to kind of
they play with that
they play
idea
with
in
that
a cool
idea
way.
in a totally cool way. And though it's not like the best line in the movie, it's an interesting... Gazzara's character is much, much more interesting than he needs to be. And one of the things that's interesting is you get his backstory, but like you never get like a scene where someone's like, I hate this guy or something. He's just insidiously enwrapped in this town.
Yeah.
It's really, really strong.
It's a great shout.
Yeah.
So the Hans Gruber Master Thief Award for stealing the movie. We tweaked this rather than stealing the scene. I think it's like, who was the biggest scene stealer? Who stole the movie? Please.
Gentlemen? Wade Garrett. I think it has to be Sam Elliott because he shows up like 45, 50 minutes into the movie. You kind of forget he's in it. And every scene, in addition to being like, I mean, what an Adonis of a human, he's Sam Elliott. Like he kind of almost steals Doc away from Patrick Swayze for a night.
I think it's impossible for any movie that Sam Elliott is in is there any movie he hasn't stolen that he's been in? He's just so good,
right?
He's so memorable.
He's really, he almost steals Big Lebowski, and he's in it for 3 minutes.
The Contender, I remember, like he completely stole that movie.
Is that a Ron? Who's the Contender?
Rod Lurie.
Rod Lurie.
Political drama.
Gary Oldman's in that.
Gary Oldman.
Yeah, that's
and
a good
Jeff
movie.
Bridges. I mean, a lot of great actors, a lot of great performances. But to me, I remember Sam Elliott is what I
totally
remember.
Forgot he was in that.
He's just so impactful.
I'm looking at which we should post on social media, your Goon Guides, and your Double Deuce team to see if there's anybody who could be scene stealers. I think Cody's really good, and I had him
on my list of He's nominated for sure.
I have to say, if he had more than one, Keith David is such a presence that although he does not steal the movie, that scene when you're watching it, you're like, oh, it's all about Keith David. All I'm thinking about is the fact that Keith David is in this scene.
So my nominees were Wade, Doc, Jeff Healey, but I'm curious to know, you would put Wade Garrett ahead of Brad Wesley for stealing the movie. Your man, Ben Gazzara.
That's a good point. I mean,
listen,
Ben
Gazzara, you on a dilemma akin to Dalton's dilemma.
Yeah, Ben Gazzara has my heart, but I think that it's, first of all, I think it's hard for a character who's in the film that much to steal it. I think Sam Elliott walks away with the movie, also because he dies. I mean, I know that that Ben Gazzara dies, but he dies at the end of the movie, right? I feel like Sam Elliott's midway to 2/3 of the way exited, like kind of you wish he was still there.
I'd agree. I'd say that Sam Elliott does the most with the least screen time.
I also think Kevin Teague is really, really good as Frank Tillman and doesn't get that much screen time actually, but that's one of those great actors who you're like, oh, I've seen that guy in some stuff. Yeah, he's good.
All right, so I'd agree with you, by the way, for the record. I agree that it's Wade Garrett.
Wade Garrett.
The legend. All right.
Followed up closely, I think, by Brad Wesley, for sure.
You want to introduce the next one?
The Dick Thornburg Award for Dick of the Movie. Oof. Pat McGurn.
Sure.
Up there, played by John Doe. He's the bartender who gets fired.
Bartender
and then
with the mustache who goes, "Hey, Chicken Dick," with the big knife.
O'Connor, played by Michael Ryder, who's kind of like, for a while you think is maybe Brad Wesley's like second in command, and then he humiliates him and he kicks him in the balls and stuff like that. Tinker, it's got to be on that list. I don't know. There's a lot. That's a classic, like Three Stooges girly thing. Yeah, someone should be there like, why yada? Like it's ridiculous. Who is it? I don't know who it is.
Well, okay, so yeah, I've got Jimmy Reno, the head henchman, thieving barman Frank McGurn, angry bouncer Morgan.
Everyone on this list.
Sharing husband.
Oh, that guy is a huge
Collins,
dick. Though, is he a bigger dick than the guy who doesn't have the $20?
Well, good
So
question.
we didn't talk about this scene, but there's a scene in the movie where, towards the beginning, where Swayze has just entered the bar. It's like madness in this. It's like the Garden of Earthly Delights, Hieronymus Bosch level depravity. And there's a guy who's like, there's these two dudes drinking Miller Lights, and this guy with his wife, and he's like, you guys like these? It's like impossible to talk
He calls
about.
them attitudes.
Yeah, he calls them attitudes. He's like, you like my wife's tits or something, and they're like, yeah, and he's like, you can kiss him for $20, and the guy goes over and he starts touching them. And then it's revealed that he doesn't have the $20. I can't decide who's
All hell breaks loose.
bigger dick. I think they're both pretty bad. That scene is
no one
weird, man.
involved in that scene comes out of it smelling of roses.
No, yeah, that's true.
But my actual pick
Oh,
for
good. Give
Dick
it to me.
Thorne, Dick of the movie, is the heckler who throws the beer bottle at Cody, the blind guitarist.
Yeah.
Who goes, "You're paid to play."
Yeah.
Throws a bottle at
That's
him.
that's
at
the
a
worst
blind
guy.
man
That's the
from point blank range. And check this: not only does he do that, but in the scene that we're discussing with the sharing husband, he actually ambles over to the table and is getting involved and peeping in on that whole
Yeah,
action.
he sucks.
So for me, the heckler, you're paid to play.
Yeah, that's the right choice.
He's Dick of the movie for me.
100%. I think you're absolutely right. Good choice. And his off-screen death is my favorite death.
Let's
in the
hope that
movie.
he did have.
Yeah.
Let's
I hope
Dalton
he gets-
just ran him over or something.
Exactly.
So, and then our final
The best death.
best death.
Now
not
we
a
don't
ton
have
of
a
nominees.
name
Not
for
a
this.
ton
There's
of
not a lot of
noms.
people
Not a ton of
die in this
noms.
movie. What's the best death in Die Hard? What do we
I
determine?
said it was. We differed. I think you liked Marco and I liked Hans Gruber's death.
Okay,
the most.
so we can't call it the Hans Gruber Award though. So let's call it the No More Table Award
it.
for best death. It's got to be Jimmy Reno getting his throat ripped out. It's iconic.
Yeah, that's for me. It was that or Brad Wesley's.
Brad
death.
Wesley's death is good. Yeah, it's got to be one of those two, and I got to go with the iconic throat ripping. I
yeah.
feel like this movie's known for the throat rip.
Right. I'd agree.
I would agree. All right, we got it. We got that one. We got it done there.
So if we have time,
Let's do it.
It's time to play Double Jeopardy, our quiz trivia where the scores can really change. Okay, so I have I have 3 questions for you.
Okay,
and
I
our
hope they're all
listeners,
Ben Gazzara themed.
our listeners can play at home. Okay, which 1989 buddy cop action movie did Patrick Swayze drop out of to star in Roadhouse?
Lethal Weapon? No, it can't be. Of course, Lethal Weapon was 1986. Which of Tango and Cash? Tango and Cash.
Tango and
Wait,
Cash.
who's he supposed to
He was
play?
supposed to play the Kurt Russell part, which was Gabriel Cash.
Oh right, Kurt Russell's great in that movie.
But yeah, it worked out. Like we got 2 classics. instead of just,
That's Tango and Cash is great. Also,
Okay.
the reason I almost didn't say Tango and Cash is because I thought Tango and Cash was earlier than 1989. I thought it was like a 1986 movie. Anyways,
It was actually the last released movie of the 80s.
wow, we're in a Christmas movie. What a hey,
Is
Mom,
Tango and
we
Cash
finished
a Christmas
we
movie?
finished our Christmas shopping. Let's go see what's playing at the multiplex.
Go and see it any time.
Oh,
is
a
a good time for Tango
Kuchlowski
and Cash.
film? Let's do it.
All right. Question number 2. One female Roadhouse cast member also appears briefly in Die Hard. Who is it?
Is it the lady who's into him at the bar, but that he kind of ignores? Who is it?
No.
Okay, let me get. Hang on. Is it? I don't remember her name. Is it Carrie Ann?
No.
I don't know.
All right. Well, I
quit.
We just talked about her.
I'm leaving.
Cheryl Baker, who is credited as, and I'm quoting, well-endowed wife, as in the character that we were just talking about, who is offered
Whose
by the
husband,
sharing
gets
husband.
married.
She also appears in Die Hard as the office worker who is interrupted mid-coitus by the arrival
knew
of
you were
Hans
gonna
Gruber
say that.
and his team.
What?
She's also in Lethal Weapon as Girl in Shower 1. So, and our third and final question, so you've got one, we got one right, you got one wrong. This is to win it.
Okay.
Which Roadhouse cast member also provided the voice of iconic 80s animated bad guys Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe and Starscream from Transformers?
Oh shit! It's not on this list, is it?
It is not.
Okay, you got to give me a clue. Cobra Commander and Starscream.
He was in the running for Dick of the movie.
Who is it?
Okay, this was an amazing piece of trivia that I stumbled across. So Christopher Collins, who plays the sharing husband, had a parallel career as a voice actor of some note.
Oh my god!
Under the stage name Christopher Latter, and he originated the voice of Mr. Burns in The Simpsons before being replaced by Harry Shearer. He was also a stand-up comic who described himself on stage as a psychotic who's learned to market his problem. So that guy, the sharing husband,
Is
was
Cobra
Starscream
Commander
and Cobra Commander and did a ton of voice
Unbelievable.
acting work.
Unbelievable.
So I was that was wild.
And he has this like 3-second bit part in
as a truly awful
in
human
Roadhouse. Wow. Great voice though.
Great
I
voice.
never would have sometimes I'll hear a voice and be like, oh, that's, whoever, whatever the case is.
It's absolutely
Unbelievable.
bizarre. All right, so wrapping up, where does Roadhouse fit in the action movie tradition for you?
I mean, it definitely feels it's between two types of movies. Like there's the neo-Western. I think that's a great thing that you pinned it on. It doesn't, in terms of its Die Hard, first of all, I think Die Hard is a far more successful movie. I mean, Die Hard just has everything like real. This made me reflect on the fact that Die Hard's compression, the fact that it takes place in one location in one night, does such wonders for its story. Like, it almost, watching this in relation to that, this feels a little more ambling.
A little baggy.
A little baggy, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it could be 10 minutes shorter, potentially. But I mean, a super good time. Not in my top tier of action movies, but like, I'm glad I filled a hole that I hadn't seen. How about for you?
I'm a fan. You know, I love Roadhouse. I don't think it's going to make many people's top 10 action movie lists or a certain top 10 of the 80s, but it's a movie that I know has a huge following. A lot of people love this movie, and as I said, if it's nothing else, if not thoroughly entertaining from start to finish. Swayze is terrific, Gazzara is terrific, Elliott is terrific, Kelly Lynch is terrific. It's peppered with a bunch of great character actors, and it is just nonstop.
No, he had
fun.
a great time, and it feels like perched. I don't know, like action movies, 80s, I would say 80s and 90s are my era for action movies. I don't think but it feels like it's perched at the end of that like first wave of greatness of the action movie.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's a fitting ending towards the 80s tradition of action movies, being as it came out in 1989. Finally, well, first of all, throat rips out of 5.
3.
Okay.
You?
I'd give it 3.5. I'd give it
okay.
3.5.
I'm going down to 2.5 throat rips.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. No, 3 out of 5 I think is good.
Yeah,
I think
that's fair.
Yeah, that's
I think it's
fair.
fair.
Yeah. What's our next movie?
Well, I would love to discuss with you 1989's License to Kill.
Ooh, the one of 2 Timothy Dalton starring James Bond films.
A real outlier in the Bond canon that I believe is heavily influenced by Die Hard.
I think you're right, and features a young Benicio del Toro.
Yeah, amongst some fascinating actors.
Well, I'm very excited to talk about that. I'm Liam Billingham.
I'm Philip Gawthorne.
This was Die Hard on a Blank. We'll be back next time with some new FBI guys, I guess.
Bye, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Die Hard on a Blank is a podcast hosted and written by Philip Gawthorne. Liam Billingham co-hosts and produces the show. Mike Mayer and Michael Sugar are the executive producers. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at DieHardOAB. Please rate, review, and subscribe and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Special thanks to Suki Chu and the whole team at Sugar 23. See you next time on Die Hard on a Blank.